Hello and welcome to another episode of the Legal Gym Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today, where we're going to be talking about the 4 main contracts that you need for your online business. For the show notes for today's episode, which will include all of the links and resources for everything that I'm going to be discussing today, make sure to head over to hawthornelaw.net/006. All right, let's dive in. So today we're going to be talking about the 4 contracts that every online business owner needs. And when we're talking about contract, we're talking about a contract is basically a legal document or an agreement between two parties that basically provides for some sort of value exchange. So some examples of contracts that you've entered into are going to be like your cell phone contract, or if you hire somebody to, redo your kitchen, you're going to have a contract for that. Or if you buy real estate, or if you buy a car, or if you buy, anything like that, you're going to have contracts in place. We deal with these contracts almost every single day, and every single website you go to is going to have contracts in place. And those are exactly what we're going to talk about today. Now, these are incredibly important because if you go back and you listen to my last episode 005, we talk about chargebacks and how to deal with chargebacks. And one of the main ways to win your chargeback disputes is to make sure that you have a clear and explicit refund policy that's going to be contained in one of the contracts that we're going to talk about here today on your website. There's 4 main contracts that I want to talk to you about today. Those are going to be the privacy policy, the terms and conditions, terms of sale, and legal disclaimers. Those each have their own roles and importance on your website. And so what we're going to talk about what each of these contracts are, why they're important, when you need to put them into place for your business, where you should put it on your website, who needs to get one, how to get them, and some special considerations that may come up with each of these contracts. So let's go ahead and start with the privacy policy. A privacy policy is basically a document that is legally required in all 50 states. It's also required in the European Union through the GDPR regulations. It basically is a document or a contract that outlines how you're using people's private information. It's important because it is legally required, like I said, in all 50 states. And you need it if you are going to be collecting information from people, their private information, such as their name, their email address, their regular address, their credit card information, anything like that you're going to be collecting from people. You need to make sure you have a privacy policy in place on your website. If you don't, you could be held liable. There's civil penalties if you don't follow through with these regulations. So you need to make sure you have those privacy policies in place. This is going to be one of the first contracts that you're going to put on your website, and this is going to be universal regardless of whether you've got an e-commerce store, you're selling a course or a membership, or maybe you're just selling one-to-one personal services like you're a yoga instructor or you're a graphic designer or something like that, where you're selling information or services from one-to-one between you and a client. You still need to have this privacy policy in place. They're vitally important. The only situation where you would not need a privacy policy if you have a website that basically doesn't collect any information. We call these kind of the basically, if you have a brochure website, which basically it means it's maybe a 1, 2, 3 page website that just has basic information about your business with a phone number that they can call, but it doesn't have a contact form, which honestly is rare. But if that's the case, then you probably don't need a privacy policy or any of these other documents. You might need a terms of service, a terms and conditions, which we're going to talk about next. But if you're collecting any information at all from people that visit your website, you have to have a privacy policy in place. And if you would like to get one, I'll include a link to a privacy policy that we have for sale in our legal template store on the show notes page for this episode, which again, you go to hawthornelaw.net/006. And you should get access to that privacy policy template that you can purchase for sale for download. Now, the next important contract that you're going to need to have for your website, for your online business, is a terms and condition page. And this is something that, although it's not legally required, it's a document that I highly, highly recommend that you have in place on your website. And the reason why it is so important is because it's basically going to govern how a visitor to your website is going to interact with your website. It's going to outline what they can and can't do. So it's going to protect your intellectual property. If somebody would to take the content off your website and steal it as their own, then they're going to be bound by the terms and conditions of your website, and you'd be able to sue them in venue. close to you. You can include venue clauses in there. You can include, like I said, intellectual property protections. You can include all sorts of other things about what people can and can't do on your website. If you're collecting comments on your website for blog posts and different things like that, this is a great way to govern what people can and can't do in those comments. And it also is a way to protect you in the event somebody posts copyrighted material that would infringe on somebody else's copyright on your website. Because what you can do is you can include a DMCA takedown notice within your terms and conditions or as a separate document entirely that is going to give you safe harbor in the event somebody posts something that is owned or the intellectual property is owned by somebody else. So it protects you in that regard as well. So where are you going to put this document? Well, typically what I recommend is that in the footer of your website, you have the privacy policy as well as a link to the legal terms and conditions for your website. And you're going to have both of those linked in the footer, and they're going to be separate documents. I would not recommend that you make them the same document, although some people do. They put one legal document that just says legal, and they've got all this information in it. The problem with that is if somebody really needs to get at the DMCA takedown notice, or they need to get at the privacy policy information or something like that, and they go to that one big document, it might be hard for them to find what they need, and they'll just say, you know what, it's not here, so that could be a problem for you. So put all of these documents in the footer of your website where anyone can access them regardless of what page they're on your website. It's always going to be in the footer under just legal. So you have a legal terms and conditions, you have legal privacy policy, you might have, we're going to talk in a little bit about legal disclaimers. You want to include those in the footer as well. But that's where you need to put this document. Now, who needs a terms and conditions document? I would say, like I said, it's not legally required that anybody have a terms and conditions document. But I would say if you're running an online business where you're selling goods or services through your website, then you probably need to have a terms and conditions page. Again, if it's just a postcard, not a postcard, but if it's just a brochure site where you're just listing some information about you that somebody can use to call you if they'd like to engage your services, maybe you don't need it. But for pretty much anyone else, it's going to be helpful to have this terms and conditions document right there in the footer where anybody can get at it if they need that information. Now, some of the big mistakes I see people make with these terms and conditions is they take terms and conditions off of other sites that they think are very relevant to theirs, and they copy and paste those documents into their own page on their own website. The problem with that is what I see people do is, number one, they don't properly fill out the document. So I've gone on pages where people have used templates for this type of thing, and it said, email, you can contact us, and it'd be in brackets, insert email here. I mean, people just don't follow the instructions when they're doing these things. I've seen other ones where people have listed other businesses under who to contact. It's clear that they took this from another website. That is a problem. So I would say, just in general, it's bad practice to take these from somebody else's website. Not only is it intellectual property theft and copyright infringement, but in all likelihood, there might be clauses and things that are in that document that might not apply to you and your business. And conversely, there might be things that do apply to you and your business that are not included in that document. So generally speaking, it's a bad idea to steal these from other websites. I would not recommend it. How to get one? Well, again, if you go to the show notes page for this episode, hawthornelaw.net/006, you're going to be able to get a link to the terms and conditions that you can purchase for sale on our website. The next document I want to talk about is the website terms of sale. Now, this is different than the terms and conditions. This is not a blanket document that's between you and anyone that comes to visit your website. This is actually a document that serves as a contract between you and anyone that purchases your products or services from your website. And this is vital, absolutely vital that you have for your online business, because this is going to govern, what happens if something goes wrong with that sale. If somebody purchases something from you and they ask for a refund or they issue a chargeback, like I talked about in the last episode, this is the document you're going to need to show that, the chargeback wasn't legally valid, or that there should be no refund. If there's going to be a dispute where somebody wants to file something in court, this is the document that's going to show what court would be valid. Or if you can even go to court, maybe you require an arbitration before anything would go to court. Maybe you require mediation before something will go to court. Maybe you require that they're going to have to come to you to file a legal case in your jurisdiction where you live, as opposed to on the other side of the country. So it's really important, I can't stress this enough, that you have a valid terms of sale with your website. And there go the dogs barking. Hopefully you cannot hear them. And again, if you would like to grab a copy of the terms of sale that we have for sale on our website, they'll be included in the show notes page for this episode. All right, so the last document that I really want to talk about today is the legal disclaimers. And this isn't so much a legal contract as it is a legal defense, but it's really important that you include these on your website. So basically what legal disclaimers are, it is a clause or something that basically tells somebody who's visiting your website. It's basically a statement that's denying responsibility that is intended to prevent a civil lawsuit or liability from arising for anything that you say or do on your website, or anything that you don't say or do on your website. So for example, when I give my legal disclaimer for all these episodes, which basically states that I am not your lawyer. If you want to hire me as your lawyer, you're free to do so, but anything I say or do on this podcast should not be construed as legal advice. What I'm doing there is I'm giving you a legal disclaimer that says that I'm denying responsibility for any actions that you do or don't do that might cause you legal liability, because I'm not your lawyer. And I don't know anything about you. I don't know anything about your personal situation, so I cannot be construed as giving you legal advice. Now, I'm giving legal information on here. Is it applicable to everyone who listens to this? Maybe, maybe not. Is it something that you should take action on and change the way you're currently doing business? I don't know, because I'm not your lawyer, so I don't know what you should or shouldn't be doing in your particular business. But that is basically what a legal disclaimer is. It's a statement denying responsibility that is intended to prevent some sort of civil liability from arising because of the acts or omissions that you do on your website. It's important because if you have a really strongly worded legal disclaimer, you're basically going to be able to cut off lawsuits before they even get filed. Because if somebody takes a lawsuit to a potential lawyer and says, I want to sue this website or the owner of this website because they gave me this information, I acted on that information, and now I'm hurt as a result, then the lawyer, that the plaintiff's lawyer that you're going to go to, that the person that would want to sue you is going to go to, I should say, is probably going to look at that and look at the website and say, well, did you notice that they've got all these legal disclaimers everywhere? They've got a legal disclaimer on their homepage. They've got a legal disclaimer in their footer. They've got a legal disclaimer in the terms and conditions of their website. Did you not see any of that? Did you not understand that you were acting on your own and you weren't necessarily hiring them to give you any professional advice? Most plaintiff lawyers are not going to follow through and file a lawsuit under those circumstances. And so that really is going to give you a leg up in the event that something were to go to court. It's going to give you the ammunition you need to get the lawsuit tossed if something does get filed against you. So it's really important to have strongly worded legal disclaimers on your website. Where you're going to put it? Exactly where I just said. You're going to put them on the homepage. You're going to put them in the footer. You're going to put them in the terms and conditions. You might put them in the privacy policy. You're going to put them anywhere where somebody might be on your website so that they know and it's crystal clear to them that you are not acting in any type of professional capacity and you're not giving them any type of advice that they should be acting upon. Who needs one of these? Basically, anyone who might be giving some sort of advice on a website. So you could be talking to people about how to earn money online. You could be talking to people about health or wellness issues. You could be giving professional guidance of some type, like legal or tax advice through a website. You could be, giving stock trading advice through a website. Anything like that where you're giving information that somebody could act upon and could be hurt to their detriment, then you really need to have a legal disclaimer in place on that website. And again, we've got copies of all the different types of legal disclaimers that you might need for sale in our online legal template store. Again, links to all that will be included in the show notes for today's episode. All right, all you Legal Gym listeners, now that you know more about the legal contracts that you need if you're building an online business, you are ready to implement. Because if there's one thing we love to do over here at the Legal Gym, it's to take massive and complete action. So if you haven't already, make sure to check out the show notes page for today's episode. You can get a rundown of all the links and resources and templates that we talked about here today by visiting hawthornelaw.net/006. That's going to be the home base for all of your legal and business tools and resources to help you start, build, and protect your online business. Thank you so much for listening today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Why did I say that? I'm not going to see you in the next episode. I look forward to having you listen to me, I guess, in the next episode. Have a great one, folks.